as we like to do with Alan Dershowitz, Harvard Law Professor, Harvard Law School Emeritus Professor. Let me get the title out correctly, sir. The author of the book, Get Trump, The Threat to Civil Liberties, Due Process, and Our Constitutional Rule of Law. Always fun to speak with you. As some people would say, it's controversial to have you on, but we're not afraid to have any discussion. I got to ask you, do you think the former president will be forced to limit his comments in public, whether they're on Truth Social or out loud, as this alarm is being raised with the Justice Department?
Well, first of all, the very fact that you say it's controversial to have me on shows the new McCarthyism that exists. I'm just stating my legal opinions. I'm a liberal Democrat who voted against Trump twice, will vote against him a third time if he runs. I'm just telling you what the Constitution and what the law says. And if that's controversial today, there's something very seriously wrong with our legal system. Look, he is presumed innocent at this point, like all of us are. He should have exactly the same right to speak as you and I have under the First Amendment. He hasn't been convicted of anything, and even if he's convicted, that doesn't restrict his First Amendment rights. Of course, if there are confidential materials like grand jury materials, everybody can be prevented from disclosing those. But the government has a very heavy burden to demonstrate that they would be harmed and that the public would be harmed by any disclosures. Otherwise, any defendant should have the right to defend themselves not only in court under the Sixth Amendment, but in the court of public opinion under the First Amendment. We shouldn't have different rules for Donald Trump or different rules for people who defend Donald Trump in the court of law or in the court of public opinion.
Well, whether or not controversial is the right word to use, you actually make a lot of news quite often, including right now for this, suggesting that special counsel Jack Smith himself could possibly be indicted for his handling of the case. Why?
Well, I use that only as an illustration of how open-ended the indictment is. The indictment charges essentially that Trump lied to the public. Oh, he says that's not what the indictment says, but that's the core of it. And look at what Smith did. He puts in a paragraph purporting to describe the speech that Donald Trump made, a speech I thoroughly disapprove of, on January 6th, and then he lies about the speech. He deliberately, willfully, and maliciously omits the two key words in the speech that bring it under the First Amendment, namely that President Trump wanted his protesters to demonstrate peacefully and patriotically. How does an ethical prosecutor leave those two words out of an indictment? Moreover, the indictment charges him under the Ku Klux Klan statute that says if two or more people gathered together to deny anybody their rights. What if the Supreme Court ultimately rules that Trump had a right to say what he said, that it was protected by the First Amendment? Does that mean Smith and his associates conspired to deny him his rights? Those are the vaguest kinds of statutes. You know, Thomas Jefferson once wrote that for a criminal statute to be clear, it has to be reasonably clear to a person reading it while running. That's the image. You hold, he's running, he's reading the book, and he has to understand that it's so clear. Well, I'm sitting. I've been studying this for 60 years as a criminal lawyer and as a professor. I don't understand many of the elements of this indictment. Just not clear at all.
And that's saying something, because that's one thing no one can take away from you is your long history, your experience, for sure, decades of experience. The former president's defense team is trying to move this case out of D.C. and get a new judge. Is that even possible, or is that more laughable?
Oh, it's very possible, and it should be done. No American, whether you're a Democrat or Republican, liberal or conservative, will trust a verdict rendered by a jury pool that's 95% anti-Trump and by a judge who has a long history of association with the Democrats and a long history of criticism of Donald Trump. This case ought to be moved to Virginia or some other purple state, and in front of a judge who has no history and has never said anything. This is one of the most controversial, talk about controversial cases in American history. And it has to not only be fair, but it has to be seen to be fair. And if I am the prosecutor, I don't even object to moving this to Virginia or some other place where there can be a fair jury pool. And I don't object to getting this case taken in front of a different judge. If the case is so strong, why is the prosecutor worried about where it's going to be tried and in front of whom? It should be winnable, if it's so strong, in front of any judge, in front of any district, and they shouldn't be trying to get the tactical advantage of having a jury pool that's so heavily anti-Trump.
Alan Dershowitz, raising some points worth talking about. Thank you, as always, for being on. Thank you for watching. Go to newsnationnow.com to find NewsNation on your television provider. And don't forget to click the red subscribe button below to get more of NewsNation's fact-driven, unbiased coverage.